EMN held its 11th annual conference in Lisbon, Portugal. 260 people gathered from more than 20 countries to participate in this event to share their views and experiences with one another. The main theme of the conference was employment, challenges and opportunities for microfinance. On this occasion, we interviewed some of the participants and asked them how they see the situation of the microfinance sector in their respective countries and in Europe. Hello, Faisal.
How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Good, thank you. Faisal, I really appreciate that you've made the time to speak to us this morning. And I would like to tell people who are watching this video that you are the Managing Director of Fair Finance in the UK, and you were the former President of the EMN. And just heard it this morning that you've been honored with an OBE from the Queen in England, so congratulations. Could you please tell us a little bit about this? So what was this honor?
Well, the honour was unexpected. So in the UK we have civilian honours where the Queen recognises long service and activity, whether that's in the public world, the social world, the sports world, or even in business. And every year she nominates or picks a few people. And I've been fortunate enough to be nominated and recognised by the Queen as a pioneer in community finance and microfinance in the UK. I'm also very fortunate to be recognised at the same time as Angelina Jolie and Daniel Day-Lewis, so I'm very much looking forward to meeting them at the same day, and I think we get a special email address that we can share.
Brilliant, well, congratulations. And we also heard it yesterday that you stepped down from the presidency of the EMN board. What was the reason for that?
So I've been involved in the EMN for many years, so probably the last, I think it's fair to say maybe 7 or 8 years, and then the last 3 of those, last two and a half of those as the president. So I think there are 2 issues that I've really wanted to do. One is to improve the governance of the EMN and build it for the long-term sustainability. And in some ways I feel that I've done that. So I've helped the EMN move from Paris to Brussels. I've helped the new board start. I've created a stronger governance system. And one of the good things about governance, or one of the important things about governance, is if you have somebody in the same position for too long, that's very bad for governance. And so I want to move on to give somebody else the chance. But also it's very important to have transition. So although I'm no longer the president, I'm still on the board.
Yes.
And I'll be supporting the president in doing it. So the other reason is, why did I do that? So there's the governance issues. I'm running a very busy microfinance organisation in the UK. We've just been recognised by the Queen. We had a visit from Mohammed Yunus. We won the industry award last year. We won a visit from the Prime Minister last year. The company is growing very big. I can't commit the time needed to run that and be the president of the EMN. And EMN is moving into a very, very high level advocacy position right now. And I just don't have that time. And they need somebody who has the time. And my replacement is Patrick Sappi, who is a fantastic person to lead all of that.
And what were the biggest challenges during the past 2 years when you were the president of EMN?
So I think one of the biggest challenges has been building a new team. I mean, we moved the EMN from Paris to Brussels. We cleaned the entire staff team and rotated them around to a more appropriate staff. So that was a big challenge. And then we had to find a new board, and we had to develop a new strategy and a new membership strategy, and we had to sustain the finances. So it's been a huge amount of work. But the good news is that 2 years of really, really hard work has meant that we have a strong board, strong team, strong finances, and a good established network.
I see. And now we are looking forward to the new programming period, this new financing period. So what kind of challenges do you foresee for the microfinance sector, and what kind of opportunities might there be for the sector?
So I think it's quite fair to say that money is drying up. That's a fact. I think budgets are under stress. However, there is still money being spent, and there are still programming periods that are coming out. I think the biggest challenge for microfinance organisations is proving still that they're relevant. And when I say relevance, I mean demonstrating scale, demonstrating impact, demonstrating good governance and good organisations, and proving to the outside world that they're relevant. There are 26 million people who are unemployed in the European Union. No small number. 50% youth unemployment. These are big figures. And now I'm not saying that microfinance can fix it, but unless they figure out where they can make a systemic impact, they lose their relevance. So they need to figure this out. So the big challenge for microfinance is, how do you prove that you're relevant? How do you scale successfully? And how do you build strong organizations? And there are good examples, and the network, the EMN, is a good way of facilitating that network. And the EU is resourcing and funding some of that. But you need to look locally as well. What are the local banks doing? What are social investors doing? What is philanthropy doing? What is governments doing? How is everybody involved? What is the social economy involved in? And I think this is where microfinance needs to figure out their role.
Yeah. And what is the lesson that you have learned during this period of time?
I think the lesson, well, if I'm honest, the lesson I've learned is that things take a long time. They take a long time. And success is a measure of how long you've been able to do something. The EMN has been going for nearly 10 years. I've been a practitioner for 16 years, and it's taken a long time to get to a position where I can say that we are almost successful. We're almost in that position. And that's what I would say to everybody, is that you need to figure out what your metrics are, but you need to be in the game. Yes. And you need to be here, because we are not projects, we're institutions, and we're trying to change systems, and that doesn't happen in 3 years, it happens in 10 or 20. It happens when we're permanent, and that's the challenge, I think, for not just the EMN, but MFIs and organizations and all of us as practitioners.
If you were in a decision-maker position, what kind of measures would you introduce that would help the microfinance sector to grow, to improve, to fulfill its social mission?
I think there are lots of different decision-making positions. I think, today's conference is a classic. Okay, we talk about unemployment as a key metric, but our opening panel discussion talked about the social economy, the entrepreneurial culture, the investment opportunity, the banking partnership, the private sector leverage, the MFIs, and capacity building and society, right? Each of those has decision makers in all of those. I think you need to figure out which decision making you want to be part of and where you would sit. I think historically, one of the challenges is about being honest about what's possible. So I would say to, let's say, the European Union, do they feel that microfinance organizations are important institutions? If so, why? And if they understand why, they should fund and support the growth of the institutions. Is one. Does the government believe that microfinance makes a difference? Why? If they understand why, then they should fund and support specific programs about making this successful. Does society believe that microfinance can make a difference? How can we engage with people to make that kind of difference? Can politicians change the culture of entrepreneurialism? Those are the kind of decisions that every individual decision maker needs to make. And banks need to ask themselves, will they want to get involved in this because it's the right thing to do? How will they do it? So these are big questions, and I think people in decision-making positions have to ask themselves, is it important? And then make it happen. I don't think there's any one solution for any of it. So I don't answer your question fully, but I think everybody has to figure out their own answer. Yeah.
Thank you. We have asked Jaime Duran Navarro, the president of the Spanish Microfinance Association, about the microfinance situation in Spain. Jaime, first of all, thank you very much for making this interview with us.
Really a pleasure.
First of all, can you please tell us about the situation, the microfinance situation in Spain? How does the economic situation affect the sector over there?
Well, the financial crisis have a different impact in Spain because it affects also all the saving banks. Saving banks were the loan provider for the microfinance sector. So all of them stopped in 2010. So the sector collapsed. At that moment, we make a national meeting, where we discuss about the future of the sector. So one of the conclusions was that we need IMF to appear in Spain, because all the loan providers only was saving banks, and we need microfinance institutions to be there, considering microfinance institutions different from saving banks. So it's non-profit organizations with social targets and really providing not only loans but also non-financial services. So from that point, we start working for a new legislation that will provoke an opening in the sector for these organizations to appear. most of them are social entities, foundations, associations, and they want to provide loans and non-financial services. So we make a proposal, a very simple proposal, that 7 points that we discussed with the government, and it was very important to know that the first question from the government was how much cost, and it's nothing. It's just small changes. Where do you get the funding? There's funding in Europe that is not coming to Spain because we don't have microfinance institutions. So there is no appropriate legal framework. And what it's about was the third question of the government, and it's about employment. So if you put the three together, it's clear that it's very needed in Spain. So from that, we started a discussion with the Spanish government. They understood very well the claims from the social sector, and they agreed to approve it. So now we are in the final stage. We're just waiting that the president of the government sign the law, and waiting for that. Actively waiting. We're not just waiting, because what we have done in this period, you take the bad things and you can create an opportunity. So once the sector was destroyed or disappeared, we create a new one, very well coordinated. Okay, and now what we are doing is, with all this discussion with the government, we did it with the European Union, especially with the delegation of the European Social Fund in Spain and the European Development Fund also. So what we're going to do is to create a sector with one budget, with one program, to be discussed with the European Commission. So we're not going to go alone, each one looking for funds. No, we're going to work as a sector, and a sector where we have loan providers, we have microfinance institutions, we have social institutions that are going also to provide non-financial services, and we have also the beneficiaries association. So women are represented, migrant people are represented, self-employment people are represented. So we created a unique forum where all the needs and capacity of all the actors can interact and strengthen the sector for the future. No? That's the idea.
Thank you. Now, we are at the beginning of a new programming period. What kind of challenges do you foresee for your sector in Spain?
Well, the challenge is to negotiate with them with one voice. That's for me the most important thing, because when we talk with the European Commission, we need to have credibility. And credibility is all the people that we are serving. We represent millions of people in Europe. In Spain, we're talking about 500,000 people. We are close to them, we work with them, we know what they want, and we're speaking with one voice. That's the best active we have to discuss with the European Social Fund, for example. And if we are able also to present just one program, for them, the European Commission, they like one contract. Yes. One contract with all the organizations. So if we're able to provide all this process and to provide just one voice, one channel, to arrive to all the people, that I think they will appreciate a lot. And I think that's something we have to do all around Europe, yes. That all the national networks are able to speak on behalf of all the organizations and to get funds for all the organizations,
I see. And if you were in a decision-making position, what kind of measures would you take in order to enhance the social efficiency of the microfinance sector?
That's a big discussion, but my point of view is very clear. Microfinance institutions, as we put it in Spain, should be non-profit organizations, should have social targets. We are not talking about loans. We are talking about believing in people and their future. So we're talking about providing loans, providing training, providing follow-up, mentoring, everything that they need in order that they succeed and they can improve their living conditions. That's what we want to do. That's our sector. Our sector is not just small loans, it's a banking sector, it's a finance sector. No, it's a social sector. We are working to support the social and or financially excluded people. That's the sector. So for me, that will be the idea, to make understand to the European Commission that we are not talking about shadow banking, we're not talking financial service, we are talking about social services. Social sector with a link to the finance. And we are a complement to the bank. We are not part of the bank. We are a complement. We are different from the bank, but we can work together. That's the idea.
Well, Clement, thank you very much for the interview.
You're welcome.
Az IMN Lisszabonban tartotta a 11. éves konferenciát, és ezen alkalomból beszéltünk Szegfő Tiborral, a Magyar Mikrofinanszírozási Hálózat elnökével. Tibor, pár szóval bemutatná nekünk a Magyar Mikrofinanszírozási Hálózatot?
A Magyar Mikrofinanszírozási Hálózat néven 2005-től tagjai a European Microfinance Networknek a vállalkozásfejlesztési alapítványok. Ezek az alapítványok azok, akik Magyarországon elkezdték az első mikrohitelprogramnak a lebonyolítását. 2013-ban teljesen újjá szerveződött ez a hálózat, gyakorlatilag az alapítványok hálózatából egy teljesen nyitott hálózattá vált, ami konzorciumi formában működik. Ennek a konzorciumnak a vezető partnere a Székesfehérvári Regionális Vállalkozásfejlesztési Alapítvány. Nagyon fontos, hogy ez most már egy nyitott hálózat, bármilyen szervezet csatlakozhat ehhez a hálózathoz, aki a hálózat alapcéljaival egyetért. A hálózat alapcéljai pedig azok, hogy a társadalmi célokat, szociális célokat szem előtt tartó mikrofinanszírozás európai tapasztalatainak a meghonosítása Magyarországon az minél szélesebb körben elterjedjen, illetve támogatott legyen. Ennek a megismertetése és ennek a tapasztalatcserének a lebonyolítása az egyik fő célja most pillanatnyilag ennek a hálózatnak.
És miért fontosak ezek a nemzetközi találkozók a magyar mikrofinanszírozás szempontjából?
Mindig lehet másoktól tanulni. A magyar mikrofinanszírozó szervezetek nagyon elismertek külföldön, sokkal elismertebbek egyébként, mint Magyarországon. Külföldön egy nagyon jó szervezet és nagyon jó minőséget produkáló szervezetekként tartanak számon minket. Nagyon sok területen adnak a véleményünkre, szakértőként rengeteg helyen benn vagyunk, rengeteg programban együttműködünk. Ennek ellenére úgy gondolom, hogy nagyon fontos, hogy mások tapasztalatait és tudását is megismerjük. Ez az összeurópai szektor számára is nagyon fontos, és úgy gondolom, hogy a magyar gazdaság számára is, hogy a jó gyakorlatokat és ismereteket átvegyük, és amennyiben ezt keresztül tudjuk vinni, akkor Magyarországon bevezessük. Nyilván ez nem automatikus adaptációt igényel, nyilván a helyi viszonyokhoz alkalmazva és a helyi problémák megoldására kell ezeket felhasználnunk, tehát gondolkodva, de a jó tapasztalatokat átvéve kell ezeket megvalósítanunk.
Milyen irányba lehet Magyarországon a mikrofinanszírozást továbbfejleszteni, hogy a társadalmi hatás növelhető legyen?
A magyar mikrofinanszírozás jelentősen eltér az európai átlagtól. Európában többségében egy ilyen szociális finanszírozási területnek, szociális vállalkozásnak tekintik a mikrofinanszírozást. Jellemzője alapvetően, hogy egy példát mondjak erre a dologra, hogy jogi biztosítékokat nem kérnek az érintettektől, az ügyfelektől. Ez azért nagyon fontos, mert ezt a szolgáltatást alapvetően annak a szektornak szánják, aki kirekesztett a banki szolgáltatásokból, és erre a szektorra jellemző az, hogy nem rendelkezik megfelelő jogi biztosítékokkal. Például Olaszországban egy nem túl régi mikrofinanszírozási törvény szerint a mikrofinanszírozóknak tilos jogi biztosítékot kérni, tehát kifejezetten tiltva van, illetve kötelező a finanszírozáshoz tanácsadást és egyéb szolgáltatásokat nyújtani. Most Magyarországon teljesen más irányba fejlődött ez az ágazat, Magyarországon pillanatnyilag ezt inkább finanszírozási kérdésnek tekintik. Azt tudni kell, hogy ezt akik valójában a valódi mikrofinanszírozó szektort képviselik Magyarországon, azok alapítványok. De ezek az alapítványok közvetítő szerepet töltenek be, ami azt jelenti, hogy a szabályokat nem maguk hozzák, hanem közvetítőként alkalmazzák azokat a szabályokat, amiket a finanszírozó diktál. Magyarországon a strukturális alapokból a Jeremy program keretében folyik legnagyobb mértékben ez a finanszírozás, és hát a magyar döntéshozóknak, illetve központi alapkezelők döntése alapján itt nagyon szigorú, kötelező jogi biztosítékokat kérni. Tehát ez egy nagyon jelentős különbség a Európa más részéhez képest, hogy itt olyan követelményeket támasztanak az ügyfelekkel szemben, ami máshogy kizárt. Ami viszont azt jelenti, hogy azoknak az ügyfeleknek egy jelentékeny része, akinek ezt valójában készültek ezek a programok, kirekesztődnek ezekből a programokból. A program így is nagyon hatékony és nagyon jól működik, ugyanis valóban olyan vállalkozókhoz kerül el, akik korlátozottan hitelképesek a profitorientált, alapvetően a banki szektornál, ugyanakkor ennek a körnek a felső rétegéhez. Az alsó réteg, aki biztosítékokkal nem rendelkezik, nem jut ehhez a forráshoz. Ugyanakkor tudni kell, hogy ezek közpénzből finanszírozott programok, itt pontosan az a célja ennek a programnak, hogy a közösség, hogy a társadalom ezt a plusz kockázatot ennek a forrásnak a biztosításával fölvállalja. Európában látunk olyan példát például, hogy ezekből a strukturális alapokból 0%-os kamatra nyújtanak olyan hitelt, ahol nem kérnek jogi biztosítékot, és alapvetően az alap fölvállalja ennek a kockázatát. Én úgy gondolom, hogy Magyarországon fontos lenne, hogy olyan irányba fejlesszük tovább ezt a programot, hogy ezek a most kirekesztett rétegek is hozzáférhessenek a forrásokhoz.
És döntéshozó pozícióban milyen döntéseket, vagy milyen intézkedéseket hozna, amivel ezt a társadalmi hatást, amivel ez a társadalmi hatás jobban tud érvényesülni?
Én úgy gondolom, az előző válaszból elég világosan látszik, hogy a hozzáférési jogosultságot növelném meg a vállalkozók számára, és ehhez kapcsoltan a kockázatviselést csökkenteném a közvetítők számára. Tehát a közvetítők kockázatát csökkenteném ebben a dologban. Ez nagyon fontos lenne. Alapvetően a jogi szabályozás szempontjából Magyarország jól áll, ezt még mintaként is állítják több országba. Ez nagyon jól megoldott, hogy non-profit szervezeteket számára megnyitották ezt a finanszírozást, tehát ilyen területen jogszabályi változtatásra úgy gondolom nincsen szükség, ugyanakkor a finanszírozási feltételek módosítása az nagyon fontos lenne ahhoz, hogy a társadalmi hatása jobban érvényesüljön.
Szegfő Tibor, köszönöm az interjút.
Nagyon szépen. Köszönöm.
We have asked Gianpietro Pezzo, the president of the Italian Microfinance Network RITMI and the president of Microfinance, about the situation of the microfinance sector in Italy. Gianpietro, could you please tell us a little bit about the situation of the microfinance sector in Italy?
Yeah, the Italian situation is affected by very strong economic crisis. We are entering now in the seventh year of crisis, and the situation is, in terms of social effects, very bad, because our unemployment rate is until at the average level, in the national level, we arrive now at 15%. 15%. But in some regions, the situation, in particular in southern part of Italy, we have an employment rate of 30%. And if you consider, for example, young people, the situation is dramatic because practically 50%, the half part of young people are looking for a job, but they didn't arrive to find a job. So it is clear that microfinance is not only one of the financial services, but maybe it could be the priority in terms to create new conditions for social, financial and social inclusion. So we think effectively the microfinance sector can play a very crucial role in the next year. But the problem sometimes is to arrive to clarify what is effectively the first priority measures we have to assume to produce a supply in terms of microfinance for Italy, and in particular, I insist, in the southern part of Italy.
I see. We've also heard that the legislation concerning microfinance activity has changed in Italy. So what kind of changes do you expect as a result?
Yeah, this is one of the main bottlenecks we have, because 4 years ago it was a very promising change in banking law, introducing the new figure, the new typology of operator for microcredit services. And this could be a solution to produce a change in terms of the supply side in some local approach intervention. But unfortunately, 4 years later, we are waiting, still waiting for implementing rules. So nobody until now can have a license. And this for us is, I think, the big issue in terms of our discussion with public authorities, with the ministry and the central bank. It's clear that if now our operators are obliged to establish all partnership with banks to have authorization for the operations, or to obtain a license like no banking financial institutions. But this is very complicated and is complicated in terms of to produce operational costs that are excessive respect of effectively the efficiency we need to provide cheaper and very light credit to excluded people.
I see. And what kind of challenges do you see now, and what kind of opportunities does your sector have at the beginning of this new programming period?
I think we have a very important possibility if we arrive to convince public authorities that we represent a very immediate and feasible solution for social cohesion and to fight unemployment. In reality, the new European Union cycle for Italy has a very important role for the new funds, for example, European Social Fund and other centralized programs like, for example, the new Progress Employment and Social Innovation Program. But we have to establish some basic and essential rules. For example, it's clear that the unique way to obtain results is to establish public and private partnership. It's impossible to imagine, just like in the past cycle, to have only public bodies managing microcredit scheme in the southern part of Italy, for example, or in other regions, because there is no enough flexibility, not enough proximity to people. So our institution, our members in Italian Microfinance network, we have now 22 members covering practically all the national territory. They have the professionalism, they have the skills, they have the organization, they have the products to produce an immediate supply and providing microcredit services. So our message is very clear to everybody. We have to discuss to prepare this operational public-private partnership. Another point is we are preparing a new project of law with the Parliament, because we think it's important to have some tools at national level to promote microcredit, to create conditions, for example, to facilitate, to simplify procedure and to facilitate in terms of fiscal burden startup of new enterprises. So I think if we have the two arms, one is structural funds, and on the other side a very friendly legal framework, we can assume the challenge to produce not only 1,000, 10,000 or 20,000 microcredits, but produce numbers, figures consistent with the demand and the needs.
And as a decision maker, what kind of measures would you introduce that could help the social efficiency of the microfinance sector in Italy?
Yeah, for example, this is to facilitate some better definition of what is social enterprise, what is micro-enterprise, what effectively self-employment projects. And I think this is important because we need to clarify what is the target. On the other side, there is a very important role for business development services. It's clear that people need money, but not only money, because the problem is how we can have the possibility to prepare a very good project in a very difficult context. Sometimes, as I said about the economic crisis. So, a better definition of the target, business development services, and the third, the last but not least important point is to have money quick and easy, not produce some very complicated and bureaucratic procedures. And sometimes public bodies needs a change of attitude about it, because they have a very heavy procedures, and this is very costly for micro entrepreneurs.
I see. Well, Gian Pietro, thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you to you.
We have asked Uni Beate Säkäsäter, the CEO and President of Microfinance Norway, about the microfinance situation in Norway. So Uni, could you please tell me a few sentences about the situation?
First of all, the sector in Norway has quite a long history. The first groups giving microloans and doing savings started in Lofoten Islands in 1992. So it's a pretty mature sector, but organized in a totally different way than in most of the rest of Europe. In Norway you have a network of lots of self-organized groups, and they're also self-managed. So they got a funding from the Norwegian government of 25,000 euro, and they lend that capital to themselves in groups of 5 women or men, it could be. They just manage the loan fund as a revolving loan fund and take as many loans as they like. But that means nobody in the country knows how many loans have been given, or how many defaults, or what's the loan purpose, or anything like that. That's kind of the network of groups all over the country. Then you have Microfinance Norway, my organization. We started off with the same group lending principles, except for more vulnerable people who have absolutely no access to finance whatsoever. From the beginning, only immigrants, but now it's for everybody who cannot get finance for enterprise purpose anywhere. So the non-bankable, but not necessarily only non-bankable, but also those who cannot get enterprise loans from banks. So it means you can have a housing loan from a bank, but still not get an enterprise loan. And then you can get a loan from us. So we've done it slightly differently. We've pooled all the resources we got from the government in one loan fund, and the groups still make the decision who gets the loan and so on. And we use the Credinfo system, very brilliant system, replicated from Hungary. We've adapted it to our group lending, and we're doing online loan applications now. And we're very proud to introduce this to the sector. We're in the process of, showing them how they can use it also, these other groups. And some of them are a bit interested, but our biggest challenge is the government. Because on one side they give us a little bit of funding for administration and courses and trainings and so on, activities for, job creation at some stage. But when it comes to the loan fund and, the bigger money that now is available from the EU in the new phase from 2014 to 20, our government seems to have decided now, today, in the parliament, to not be part of it as Norway, although the EU Commission invited us. So I'm pretty furious about that. So I'm going to make a big campaign because we're losing out maybe 9 million euro. So if we cannot get it from the EU, they have to give it to us. Or they have to vote differently. Because the EU is positive to having Norway as part of this. And it's not only for microfinance, it's also for the whole social entrepreneurship sector in Norway, which is growing and prospering, and the government at the top level puts social enterprise top of the agenda of the new government. So how can they vote like that? So I'm kind of frustrated. Yeah. So, but I just got to know this, so I don't have all the details, just from website telling about the law and the discussion in the parliament today, and from the EU Commission saying that Norway opted out.
Yeah, talking of the law, you also mentioned yesterday that there have been some changes regarding your legislation which had a negative effect on self-employed people. Could you please tell me about that?
Well, it's not really a change of the law, it's a lack of a change in the law. In Sweden, they changed the law in order to make those who are self-employed equal when it comes to social rights with those who are employed. Yes. And that's absolutely not the case in Norway. So we find in reality people who have started businesses and for some reason didn't succeed fully, they are actually, we've met many people who have been asked to sell everything they own in order to be able to qualify for a little bit of social welfare, but being told to sell their hairdressing salon or their tools or machines or whatever that could give them an income. Just to get a little temporary support from the government, they have to sell everything. So we are challenging this kind of attitude that doesn't make self-employed equal to employed, because we think that these people are paying taxes, they're creating jobs for themselves and sometimes for others as well. It's a strategy that is actually very inexpensive for the government, and it saves huge amounts of money from the social welfare budgets. So we really don't understand why the government can't see this. So we're now lobbying very hard, of course for many years, but it's not that many people doing it. So luckily I have some good colleagues now that are new board members and influential politicians and so on. So hopefully we can change this. But it's a crucial change for more than 350,000 self-employed people in Norway who cannot get any support if they fail. If they lose their income, if they get sick, they have to wait for 17 days until they can get something. But even that is based on what they took out as profit for themselves. So if they reinvest everything they earn into the business, they won't get anything.
So if you were a decision maker in Norway, what would you make differently? What kind of measures would you introduce?
I would give people trust that they are responsible for their own lives and they can use their skills to create something that is income generating, and I would be supportive to make the framework favorable for those who want to take the chance to start something, because it creates a happy person who can actually use their resources and live in dignity and not be dependent. It's not a good feeling, and we have a lot of depression and psychological problems following this kind of situation, in addition to the economic crisis. So I would look at the effect of just dependency, grant money, as social benefits and so on, and the benefit of making people responsible for their own life and creating something they can earn money from, and maybe not 100% job. Maybe you have a little income support from the government because of a slight disability or something, but still you can be self-employed, maybe 50%, and be happy, be part of something, be part of a network, get some purpose. Because we have a very high rate of suicides and so on, and we have started a new initiative welcoming people who are struggling psychologically and who have been to prison and leaving prison and things like that. And we see that they are blooming if somebody gives them trust.
Yes.
So if I was a policymaker, I would accept the EU funding and match it from the government. I would put a lot of emphasis on finding out who are the partners who can actually make this happen, because we have the money. We have the money laying there, it's just a lack of the understanding.
I see. Thank you very much for the interview. We have asked Ben Hughes, the Chief Executive of CDFA in the UK, about the situation of the microfinance sector in the UK. Ben, first of all, I really appreciate that you are willing to do this interview with us. And can you just tell us a little bit about the situation in England regarding the microfinance sector?
So in the UK, the microfinance sector has been really established now for about 15 years, and it came on the back of an initiative that was led by our new Labour government, which recognised that financial exclusion was a big problem, a problem socially because the inequality gap was getting greater, but also a problem economically in that there was a lag in the economy. So they set up a task force with a lot of the great and the good from the financial services industry, politicians and people from the non-profit sector. And they recognised that the UK urgently needed an industry that could meet the needs of those, if you like, below the radar of where banks were comfortable to lend. And so in about 2000, we had the emergence of what became the CDFA as the trade body to grow the industry and to support what now are about 72 individual CDFIs operating across the 4 UK nations. And between them, they're lending about £220 million per year, so that's about 260 million euros. And they lend across 4 different markets. So we have the personal lending market, which is very small loans, very high volume, average about £350. The loan will only be taken out over a period of maybe 6 months. Then we have the home improvement lending market for people that have a little equity in a property but no cash, who are vulnerable. They may be elderly, they may have a disability or in some other way be threatened with institutionalized care. Then the one that's probably the most widely recognized in the UK, the micro for-profit SME lending market. And in that market last year, we lent to a total of about 50,000 SMEs and lent a total of some £55 million. And that's the market that I think politically at the moment our government has the greatest interest in, because they see that as the one that makes the most direct contribution to the UK's economy. The final market is what we call the civil society lending market. So that's lending very much to social enterprises, to community groups, or to businesses that have an explicit social mission. And so they're quite different, these markets. They have different characteristics. And I think our vision is to see them not as 4 separate silos, but very much as an integrated part of the financial services industry. And you asked how is the community finance, the microfinance industry in the UK? I would say it's good, but we need it to be better. It's grown since the financial crash in 2007-8. It's doubled. Roughly speaking, it's doubled in the value of lending every year. The number of inquiries has gone up by about 5 times. So really significant growth in awareness. But it's still a tiny, tiny part of the overall financial services industry. And I think that where we're at now is there's an urgency and an impatience to see it really scale up to the next level.
I see. And how has the economic crisis affected the work of the network?
Well, the year immediately following, we saw a doubling of inquiries because customers simply weren't able to access their credit needs through traditional sources. Their banks completely changed, obviously, their risk profile. it's interesting though, because it then leveled out, and I think the financial crisis didn't necessarily have quite the impact on the growth of the CDFI sector that we had thought it might. And I think that's for a number of reasons. The first of which, in the UK, microfinance is counterculture to the way most people view money and finance. So if you go out into the street and stop somebody and say, where do you get credit? They'll just say, a bank. And we have 5 very, very, very big banks. And there's nothing really in between. So CDFIs are pushing against a hugely powerful weight of an industry that in some respects doesn't really want to see it grow. So CDFIs have quite a low profile. People aren't used to looking for community-based finance providers. So I think lack of awareness is one major issue. The second, I think, is around capital. That despite this 5-fold increase in inquiries, the sector still has far too little capital. We did some research last year into the size of the gap in the market, and we estimate, using fairly robust academic methodology, that the gap equates to about £6.2 billion per year. £6.2 billion per year. CDFIs are lending 230, 250 million. There remains this huge undersupply of capital for CDFIs to really be able to fill that gap. And I guess the third point I would flag is around infrastructure, partly related to the capital. We have still quite an underdeveloped infrastructure. The institutions themselves are quite fragile. We don't have common operating and loan management systems. We have some standard policies across the membership, but not enough. And although there's been a lot of progress made around impact assessment, still we need to ensure that's absolutely consistent across the industry. Until we have all of those things in place, I think it's going to be a struggle for us to move up to that next size.
And what kind of challenges do you foresee, and what kind of opportunities do you see now at the beginning of the new programming period in the EU?
I think in a way one of those are two challenges that remain: capital and infrastructure, but they are also opportunities offered by the new regime, the EASY, in that it's very good to hear around the availability of technical assistance. I think we would say it's the number one priority is to invest in the infrastructure, both for us to be able to do some of that within the UK, but critically to work across nations. We would love to work more closely with the Hungarian microfinance sector so that we can look to create real efficiencies across the whole of Europe, partly around the sort of digitalization and operating platforms, partly around research, policy, awareness, but partly about being able to generate much more significant structural funds at that European-wide level. So I think, but the first stage to all of that has, I think, for individual nation states to have stronger infrastructures within so that we can develop organically. And that's the one thing that I would look at this new programme to be able to help us with.
I see. And if you were a decision maker, what kind of measures would you introduce to enhance the efficiency of the microfinance sector?
If I was within the UK or within Europe, or both? Within the UK, we've been very impressed, struck by the impact of a piece of legislation that was passed in the United States back in the late 1970s called the Community Reinvestment Act. And that act requires banks to reinvest a proportion of their profits down into the what's effectively the microfinance level, as well as ensure that banks are obliged to disclose how much they are lending at this very local level. We think something like that in the UK would have huge impact on getting the banks, who I think if it were easier would be favourable to investing more in the community and microfinance sectors. But at the moment they're so far apart. We need something that acts as a bit of a stick as well as a carrot. So I think in the UK that would be my number one action, would be to introduce new legislation that required banks to lend through CDFIs to reach those markets and effectively do some rebalancing. I think working across Europe, I would take the decision to relax some of what are very prescriptive requirements attached to some of the programs, so that there can be a much more flexible approach to individual nation states drawing down a resource in a way that's appropriate to them, and particularly around again this infrastructure issue. And one of the things we feel very passionately about is the need for more integrated local delivery, so credit unions, CDFIs, MFIs, housing providers, advice agencies, sometimes local banks, sometimes local corporate bodies. They need to all be joined up so that the consumer can better understand how to have the whole range of their finance needs met. And that's the kind of thing that if I was in Europe, I would be ensuring structural funds could be deployed for in individual nation states.
I see. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
The only other thing that I feel is very important, and being here with the EMN has reinforced for me, is the need for us to work more closely together as a continent, really, in forging common policies and standards across the industry, and indeed that we can arrive at a sort of common definition for what this industry is and what it's trying to do. I think that's very important, because then we can create real critical mass and we achieve a kind of scale that means we have to be listened to, both in Europe and in our individual nation states.
I see, Ben. Well, thank you very much.
That's a pleasure. Thank you.
We have asked Hajo Winkler, the board member of the European Microfinance Network and the board member of the German Microfinance Network, about the situation of the microfinance sector in Germany. So Hajo, could you please tell us a few things about how the microfinance sector operates in Germany and what is the situation they are in right now?
Well, at the moment we are in a transition period. I think we are one of the most successful networks in terms of how we develop the sector. There is a fund that is a 100 million fund that was set up by the government and that is provided to us, the MFIs, by the GLS Bank, so that we don't have to be an official bank. So we do the contact to the customer, and we do the business plans, and we do the credits, but in the end they are customers of a proper bank. So there's the DMI model, so it's a cooperative model. Now, at the moment we are in a transition phase, because till 2013-14 it was clear that the work was financed through European channels. Now we have a new European Parliament, as you know, and we have to rewrite the whole system in terms of who gets what money, what will be the role of the GLS Bank in the future, and what will be the role of DMI MFIs in that whole context. So we are quite in a transitional period. It's serious times, I must say.
And how has the economic crisis affected the work of the network?
Well, we are in Europe one of the member states that are doing quite well at the moment. So I must say, for the topic of microfinance, it was that microfinance got more and more into the background of politics in Germany. In the same way, I learned here with the EMN colleagues how important microfinance was for all the other countries. But at the moment, it is that we are really struggling to advocate for microfinance in Germany. Since, I would say, 4 to 8 years, the concentration on that, on a political level, went down regularly.
And what kind of challenges do you foresee, and what kind of opportunities do you see for the microfinance sector with this new programming period?
One of the biggest challenges will be to find out how we can put down operational costs and to lead a discussion whether we really reach the underbanked community, because if the whole network in Germany comes under pressure only to serve safer loans, then we start acting like a bank.
Yes.
So then we would start to exclude. So what we need is a kind of common understanding between politics and the DMI and the MFIs, that we take higher risks to put the not bankable persons into the system. And at the moment it is it's going into a direction where they say don't go into step lending, go into higher figures, exclude certain business ideas, put it on the safe side. Now what I'm saying is, okay, then you just can be a bank again.
Yes.
So this is also a time to think about whether we find our roots again.
And if you were a decision maker, what kind of decisions or what kind of measures would you introduce to improve the social performance of the microfinance sector in Germany? So how could you enhance its efficiency? What would you change?
Well, in Germany we always have the idea that a job created is only a job where you have an employer and an employee and you have a proper contract, and let's say this goes on for 5 years. But this is not our experience. Our experience is that there are a lot of smaller networks that give contracts to each other and say, come on, I have a contract here and I would like to subcontract you. Now usually this doesn't count when somebody asks you for jobs created. In Germany it is jobs created that are employees and not this kind of job creation. I can understand it because A, they are paying back as taxpayers twice, and B, it is easier to measure. But I would really include the modern forms of cooperation, like working with the internet, like working in small project groups which split and then they come together again. So I would accept this also as jobs created.
I see. Is there any other message that you would like to send away to the world?
Well, I think at the moment we see a development where we really have to bring two worlds again together. And this is on the one hand that we are really getting professional in how we lend out loans. And just let's not forget where our roots are, that we say this does not mean that we use the same prejudices as normal financial institutions. If we are in the end like a normal financial institutions, then the whole thing was in vain. So I think a good balance between tradition on the one hand, so we know where we come from, and modern technology on the other hand, I think that would be the formula.
Thank you. I see. Well, Hajo, thank you very much for the interview.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.